So let's go over the task here on the midterm and what they're asking you to do. Let's start with the prompt. The question is, write an essay that builds on selection 2 and argues for further restrictions on tourism in Antarctica. So both articles are about Antarctica. The first selection wants less restrictions, less rules, less laws for people to make it easier for people to visit and do research. Selection 2 is not against tourism and it's not against scientific research, but it's asking for more restrictions, more laws to protect the environment of Antarctica. So you want to start with the main argument. This is what you call a thesis statement. While people should be allowed to visit Antarctica and conduct scientific research, more regulations are needed to restrict tourism. So this is a sample of what your opening sentence would be. Your opening paragraph should be about. And there are a lot of things going on here. All right. First thing I want to show you is transition words. Should open this up a little. Transition words like while need to be followed by a comma. All right. The comma could be right after or in the middle of the sentence, depending on what kind of transition you're using. All right. But the reason I'm pointing this out is that transition words have two ideas in the sentence. Okay. They're used to kind of blend ideas together. The first idea you have is the counter argument. While people should be allowed to visit Antarctica and conduct scientific research, you're acknowledging that these things should happen, right? That's your counter argument. That argument goes against what you're trying to prove. Your main argument is that more regulations are needed to restrict tourism. Now, it's important to point out that you don't have to necessarily believe this is true, but the task is asking you to argue on behalf of this side. You have to be able to prove that this is right, whether you agree with it or not. The subject here is Antarctica. It's not you. So you should never start a sentence with I, me, my. You're talking about Antarctica. You're not talking about your own personal beliefs. And you're using the articles to support these ideas. Not your ideas, these ideas. The second paragraph of your essay should be the objection, the counter argument. Okay? And as I pointed out before, this is the counter argument. This is what your second paragraph should be about. It should be about why people should be allowed to visit Antarctica and conduct scientific research. And if you need reasons to support this, you look at selection 1 to support it. This can even be its own opening sentence, right? If we cut out everything else and make it a topic sentence, now you're cooking. All right? You have to understand why. All right? This will help you flesh out your paragraph. Why do people want to visit Antarctica in the first place, right? It's a cold place. It doesn't have any museums or anything like that. It doesn't have any sandy beaches, right? Why would people want to go anyway? And why is it important to do scientific research? If you could explain these two things, then the counter argument becomes more understandable, right? You understand why it's necessary to keep these things going. But then you reply. In your third paragraph, right, you go to your main argument. Like we said before, more regulations are needed to restrict tourism, right? The key word there is restrict because you're not eliminating tourism, you're just regulating it, right? More regulations are needed to restrict tourism, okay? The key word here is more. That means that regulations already exist. There are already laws that restrict tourism. There's already laws that restrict scientific research. You're arguing that we need more of it, right? You need to understand, how do regulations help, right? Go back to the article. What's the purpose of these regulations, right? That'll help you understand, explain, and argue why you need more of them, okay? Why more? If they already exist, why do you need more? And in order to answer that, you need to understand why tourism hurts. Okay? Everything has a pro and a con. You already explained why tourism is a good thing. Now you have to explain why it's a bad thing. let's look at an outline. Okay, if we're gonna outline this 5-paragraph essay, right? If we're gonna break it down into 5 paragraphs, I need you to understand what each paragraph does. The first paragraph is your opening. So just like I showed you earlier, right? You give your opening sentence, and then you give some background information. The background information should be about Antarctica itself, because Antarctica is the topic. The second paragraph has to be why somebody would disagree with you. Okay, it's your counter argument. You're acknowledging that tourism and scientific research are indeed important. Paragraph 3 is your first point. Explain why the problem exists and use textual support. Use quotes from article selection 2, right, that explain why tourism or scientific research have hurt the area. Then paragraph 4, explain what needs to be done to solve the problem, right? And that way those two arguments are a little different, right? You're staying on topic, but you're presenting two sides of the argument. And then the closing paragraph is just summarizing the essay and the argument. It's very important that you have an opening and a closing. If you're missing one of these things, then you drop a full grade.